or even on the campus. To me, that's the most emotional and powerful piece of the puzzle. So thank you for that, and thank you for what you've given to the school, and hopefully what you've taken from us. I appreciate those words, and I too thank your family for supporting you through this as well. So this time I'd like to, well, it's time to hand out some degrees, I think, but let me introduce Dean Mr. Razmi. He's a couple words, and then we can move forward with what you really worked really hard for. Okay? Mr. Razmi.
Thank you, Mr. Woodman. Good evening, candidates. I won't call you graduates yet because your degrees are not official yet. Candidates, families, and friends of the candidates, the distinguished guests that we have here, and colleagues. I'm honored to address the ITT Technical Institute Concord campus graduating class of 2013, June. And before I confer the degrees upon these outstanding individuals in front of me, whom we've had the pleasure to know for the past 2 to 4 years, I would like to say a couple of words regarding the process that they went through and education in general. Now, those of you who know me the best know how incredibly I value education. Hopefully you'll keep in mind that education is not and should not be limited to a 2 to 4 year time span of a degree program. Education is definitely a lifelong venture. It shouldn't start with the school, it shouldn't end with the school. Related to education, I hope you've seen that individuals, governments, institutions, workplace, and even banks value education so much, which is why they're so quick to give you a loan for your tuition. But you've definitely heard a lot of people tell you, in fact, Mr. Diaz just addressed this in his own speech, that knowledge is power. That statement you've all heard. And related to knowledge, education, and the learning process itself, I have some quotes that I would like to share with you by some rather famous people, some of whom you might not recognize. But the quotes are very good. The first one: it is the mark of an educated mind to be able to entertain a thought without accepting it. Yes, who said that? I just did. Aristotle.
You don't have a doctorate yet? You're not allowed to quote it?
That's true. The second one: the roots of education are bitter, but the fruit is sweet. Also Aristotle. What sculpture is to a block of marble, education is to a human soul. This is a good one. I learned law so well, the day I graduated, I sued the college, won the case, and got my tuition money back. Let's send the graduate speaker. The man who graduates today and stops learning tomorrow is uneducated the day after. Your families are extremely proud of you. You can't imagine the sense of relief they're experiencing. This would be the best time to ask them for some money. Gary Bowling said that, in case you know who he is. Education makes a people easy to lead, but difficult to drive. Easy to govern, but impossible to enslave. Winston Churchill said, success is the ability to go from one failure to another with no loss of enthusiasm. And related to, I'm going to make my speech rather short so you can get your degrees and then you can have them conferred. So I'm going to end my speech with a story that exemplifies the value, importance, and power of knowledge itself. Not necessarily education in the formal arena, but knowledge in general. There was a company that was providing some type of a product or a service, and they used a variety of machines in order to make that happen. But they had this one machine that if that machine ever was not working, the company had to shut down. They couldn't do their work. So it was the most important piece of equipment they had. And this machine was operated by a scientist who had been operating the machine for the past 20 or so years. And he knew the machine inside and out better than anybody else. And so that scientist and the machine obviously were key to the operations of that company. And then one day there was a rather heated argument between the owner of the company and the scientist, and the end result was that the owner fired the scientist. So he gets 2 other people to replace him to operate this machine. Everything was going well, and then a couple of months later, the machine stopped working. Something went wrong with it. So the owner of the company hired a bunch of techs to come look at it, open it up, analyze it, test it, hook it up to all sorts of scopes and what have you to figure out what's wrong with the machine and how to fix it. Nobody could. A whole bunch of techs came over, looked at it, nobody could figure out what was wrong with it. So obviously the company was losing money every day that the machine was not working. So it dawned on the owner that the person who knew the machine best, the scientist who he fired a couple of months ago, he should approach him and ask him if he's willing to come by, take a look at it, fix it, and then maybe pay him for that service. So he calls the scientist and says, well, the most important machine that you were operating broke down. Can you come by and take a look at it and fix it? He said, sure, I'll be there first thing tomorrow morning. So the next day he shows up. He's got a box of tools with him, and takes him literally 2 minutes to open it up, figure out exactly what's wrong with it, takes a little part out of the toolbox, replaces it, fires up the machine, and everything is good to go. So the owner of the company is absolutely impressed. He said, wow, I had so many people come by. It took them days and days and couldn't figure out what it was. So I'm really impressed, and how much do I owe you for the service? He said, oh, I'm kind of late to a meeting that I have, but I'll send you my bill in the mail. So he says, okay. A couple of weeks later, the owner of the company gets a bill from the scientist for $10,000. So he calls them up and says that this is either a joke or it's a mistake. So he calls them up and said, is this a joke? I got your bill for what you did. It took you 2 minutes and you're charging me $10,000 for this. He says, no, it's neither a joke nor a mistake. I can easily justify why I charged you $10,000 for this. It was $2 for the part I replaced, $9,998 for knowing which part to replace. Of course, there are many other stories like that that exemplify the power of knowledge and education. My personal advice to those of you graduating from the associate program would be to enroll in the bachelor's degree program. Those who graduate from the bachelor's to enroll in master's. Take education as far as you possibly can until life makes such a proposition absolutely impossible or impractical for you. So that's my advice to you. At this time, I would like to call Mr. Ali Askari to call out the names of the graduates of the Information Technology School from both the associate and master programs, and we'll start handing out those degrees.